Good afternoon, everyone. I think we'll start now. We've been joined by many people today. There's a great turnout to today's webinar. So my name is Caoimhe Gleeson and I manage the National Office for Human Rights and Equality Policy. Today is the first in our new series, our new webinar series on the Assisted Decision Making Capacity Act from legislation to practice. Our first webinar today is on navigating information on the Assisted Decision Making Capacity Act, where to find what you need. We're going to be joined by three presenters: Ultan Hines from the Nursing Home Support Scheme Office, Ian Grehan from the Decision Support Service, and Jacqueline Grogan from the National Office for Human Rights and Equality Policy. Thank you all who've sent questions in advance. The Q&A function, the question and answer function is open, so you can ask questions throughout the webinar, and we have a panel of people here that will try and address the questions. Any of the questions that are maybe not for today, we will either keep them for future webinars, or you can contact us directly and our colleagues will give you the details of how to redirect your questions if it relates to, let's say, the Decision Support Service or the Nursing Home Support Office as well. The webinar is being recorded and the slides will be made available on our website, www.assisteddecisionmaking.ie. If you wish to have a certificate of attendance, please email us directly on adm@hse.ie. There are CPD points available today, and I'll just list them out. So there's 1 point per hour from the RCPI. A total of 1.5 CPD points is awarded through the RCPI. If you're a member of the NMBI or CORU, the same number of points will be awarded, and you follow the same process for your own registration body as well. If you require CPD or attendance certificates, depending on your organisation, please again email us at adm@hse.ie. And the same as well, if you're a doctor, if you're a medical doctor, make sure you include your medical council number in relation to that as well. Just in relation to some of the questions that we were submitted today relate to other webinars that we will be dealing with, so we may or may not come to those questions today, but do be assured that we will address them further on in our webinar series. Our next webinar, just to let you know, I'll repeat it at the end, will be on the subject of discharge from wardship as well. So without further ado, Ian Grehan is going to start, and he'll be followed by Jacqueline, who will be followed then by Ultan, and then Jacqueline will then come back. So I'm going to ask Ian to start us off, who works for the Decision Support Service. So thank you, Ian.
Thank you very much, Caoimhe. My name is Ian Grehan. I'm the head of DSS Operations and Information Services. As you may know, the DSS is in the Mental Health Commission. The Information Services team specifically, I'll talk about later on, but that's your point of contact for any queries or questions, and I'll give you their information as we move through. My slideshow today, my aim is to move between the slide deck and the website. I hope to cover off the tiered arrangements, the framework, and then go into some of the additional services that fall out of that, and hopefully try and show you where to find different pieces of information that may be of relevance to you. As I progress, I'll come back to the slideshow, and within my slide deck, if you're looking at after, I have all the hyperlinks built into the slide deck, so you can then at a later date go back and access them. Objectives. Starting very basic, I'll just look at where you find the Decision Support Service website, best to access it. I'll start to navigate the DSS website. So as I said, I'll look at our services, the resources and points of interest, and this is all based on what our team would hear and see from phone calls and emails, and then I'll just very briefly touch on the My DSS portal, which is the self-help portal that we use for all of our arrangement applications as well as objections. Our reporting functionality will be built into that later on, complaints and many other services that we provide through that portal. I'll just touch on some upcoming enhancements. Interestingly enough, we're going to be doing a large website review early this year, which will lead to changes later in the year, so you may have to have me back to do all of this. And we're also launching a very exciting feature on our website in the coming weeks, so I'll touch on that. And as I said, I'll touch on support and information, just where to go if I don't cover the particular resource or item of information that you need in this presentation. So as I said, starting very, very basic, our website, decisionsupportservice.ie. You can find that by obviously using whatever search engine you use if you look for the Decision Support Service. And one thing I'd say as well is you can also just Google the specific thing you might be looking for. You might just be interested in codes of practice. You could be interested in something in relation to maybe our supervision or our application process, and you could just Google that, and it will bring you directly to that. The web page is set up quite well. Browsers that work. This predominantly refers to the My DSS portal, but it's also relevant for the Decision Support Service. So the main ones: Chrome, Edge, Safari, and Firefox as well. I suppose the initial walkthrough, as many of you may be aware, we have the tiered decision support arrangements. We have the decision-making assistance agreement, the co-decision-making assistance agreement, and decision-making representation order. Separate to that, there's the advanced planning tools, the enduring power of attorney. That's certainly where we would see the vast majority of interest in our services. From my own team's perspective, about 80% of the calls and emails that we get relate to enduring powers of attorney, and we operate a dedicated EPA help desk where people can get support stepping through the application. But thankfully, we can provide that service for all people who contact us. It's just that EPAs do take up a large portion of our resources. And then advanced healthcare directives, I'll talk to them as well. So at this point, I'm going to move over to the website. I'm going to move through how you find information in relation to those different tiered arrangements and the advanced planning arrangements. And then I'll step back and I'll talk about some of those additional services that flow out of that kind of satellite services. So hopefully this will work. Yep, we're over on the website now. I'm just going to try and give myself a laser pointer so that it's easy for you to see where I'm actually clicking. So as you can see here, decisionsupportservice.ie, it's laid out like any normal website would be, and if you're looking at it on your mobile, you really just see a sort of a condensed, a longer version of the same screen. It's set up in a way that you will always see the navy tile bars at the top, or the banner at the top, and you will always see access to our portal up there as well. And then you'll have the main banner, which has our services, which is what I'm going to touch on now, resources, which is where you'll find the vast majority of the stuff that you may want in terms of additional reading, codes of practices, forms, all that sort of stuff. And then a few other areas like news and events, getting in touch, and some FAQ. But my focus is going to be predominantly on services and resources. So if we scroll down, you can access our services here through the services button. But if I scroll down, you will see our initial tile system. So you have our decision support arrangements and you have the advanced planning arrangements. If I click into any one of these, it's going to bring me into that services piece that I mentioned up above here. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to click into decision making assistance agreement. And once you move through into the specific arrangement that you are looking for information on, you'll get that initial intro, the label of the arrangement, and then you'll be brought down again to this tile-based system. And these are all predominantly presented as a question. So it could be that you are just looking for general information. What is a DMAA? Is this the type of arrangement that I'm looking for? Or it could be that you're looking for something maybe a little bit more specific. You might want to find out if there's any monitoring or supervision in relation to a DMAA, how you might end one, what's the cost, maybe you yourself or someone that you know is going to become a decision-making assistant and they would like to understand it from their perspective. So whatever is relevant to you, but for the purpose of this, I'm just going to go into what is a decision-making assistance agreement. So essentially you're presented with a small blurb and a couple of hyperlinks. So you can read through that. If you're happy with that, great. If not, you may want to click in and drill down. So everything on the website is done through this drill down feature. So each time you come into a page, additional information is then generally available through additional hyperlinks or additional tiles. I'm going to move back out. You will see just here, you can go back out to services, but you have this, what we refer to as a breadcrumb, which gives you the stages which how you've drilled through the website. So we've kind of gone into specifically into decision-making assistance agreements. So I just want to jump back out to services. What I'm going to decision-making representation order, there is a lot of information there if I click into it. Again, introduction to what it is, how to end, the monitoring that's involved in it, and so on. However, the actual application process, while we do cover information, we do have information in relation to that, the application process itself actually sits with the court services. And if you're looking at my slideshow at a later date, actually I'll just hop back over. You will see here decision-making representation order. There's application info on the court services website. So that's going to bring you through for those Part 5 capacity applications, the different forms. They have PDF forms and they cover off the process, and the resources on their side are quite good. We would signpost people to that quite often. But again, this follows the same structure as the DMA. It's that drill down structure. It's just all information that is unique or bespoke to a decision-making representation order. I'm going to, for the next part, just use enduring powers of attorney as the primary example, because we have a lot of information here. Again, because EPAs are something that we deal with a lot. But again, this is reflective across the system. So if we go into what is an enduring power of attorney, you will be able to see a large portion of information, and it will break down the two different stages of an EPA and how that works in terms of registration and notification, and things you might want to think about in regards to the authority that you're granting the person. You then, I went back out of that. You then are able to go down and look at things like, and this is where the satellite services or those additional services that I also have in that slide are. If we're looking at the objection period, say for example in relation to an enduring power of attorney. So EPAs have two objection periods. There's the objection at the registration aspect, which is when the instrument is registered with us, when the person has capacity, and we put it on our register and it sits there, hopefully to never be used. However, if it did need to come into effect and the attorney was to initiate that process, and there is a second objection period at that notification stage. Each objection period is 5 weeks for the registration and the notification page, but period. But the specifics in how you would do that, you would drill down into the objection or objecting to an enduring power of attorney. Separate to that, you also then have things like monitoring. So monitoring is another additional service which comes into effect when we look at when the arrangement is actually in place. So of the 5 different arrangements, there are 3 arrangements that would have some sort of supervision or monitoring attached to them. So the first would be, as we're in the EPA section, an EPA, but only at the notification stage. So when it has come into effect, you would also have some reporting required around a co-decision making agreement, and there's also reporting required for a decision making representation order. So again, you would only see this tile within the relevant arrangements where it applies. So really, it goes down into all this additional stuff. I suppose in terms of EPAs, there are additional pieces of information here, such as application processing times. So if I know a question came in about our processing times for EPAs, you could go in here, have a little look, and it will tell you exactly what we are currently working on. So for an example here, we are currently working on applications that were submitted to us in August 2025. So that's approximately a 5-month processing timeline with EPAs. The volume of EPAs is increasing significantly, and the level of checks that are required at that registration stage, which is completely new and part of this legislation, are quite dense. The team have to do quite a lot to ensure that it meets the requirements of the Act, and that's a large portion of why that period of time is so long. In addition to that, you have your statutory objection period in there as well. So if anybody's looking at August and thinking, oh my God, that would be fairly reflective of what we would expect in terms of our turnaround times for registration. Continuous improvement is obviously always going on. For example, we've seen a large increase in our in the volume of applications made to us. However, our processing time hasn't really drifted out. So a lot of those savings are going into actually ensuring that we are maintaining a relatively good turnaround time. And also, we would hope that by the nature of advanced planning, the person is doing this at a stage in their life where they have capacity and they don't need the document. We want to try and ensure that most of the work is done at the first stage, so that when it is needed and the notification period comes into play, that we can turn that around quite quickly. And to date, we have been able to do that. I will notice I'm getting a little bit too far into information, but there was 1 or 2 questions on this, so I just wanted to cover it off. I would mention that we do have a policy which covers urgent EPA applications. So, as I said, ideally people will be doing this well in advance, but by human nature, often we leave these things to the last moment. And if it is an urgent case, I would say to you, have a look at our urgent policy, which I'll touch on later on as well. That documents the reasons why or what we'll accept in terms of an urgent application. Obviously, we bump that up the queue to ensure that it is registered in a more timely manner. So again, if I just go back to services, that's where you find all of the three decision support arrangements and those two additional advanced planning arrangements as well. We also have some additional information in here with regards to search the register and complaints and investigations. So I just want to touch on search the register again, just based on some questions that came in, and you will see it when my slide deck is shared, that there is a slide in there, although you won't actually see it today, it's hidden, but it provides you with links to the register. The register can be searched. There's a register for co-decision making agreements, EPAs, both registered and notified, and also then decision-making representation orders. The register can be accessed through two main channels. One is as a normal member of the public, private individual. You would access it through the legitimate interest mechanism, which requires you to establish what your legitimate interest is in accessing the register and accessing the documentation or information for that person or their arrangement. The second mechanism, which would apply to probably a lot more people on this call, would be through your organization. So certain persons or organizations under the regulations are allowed to access the register by the purpose of their profession, and these people essentially we do the pre-approval upfront so that you don't have to apply every time you want to access the register. You would do that through your organization. You have to have an approved person that does that for you, or who essentially manages the relationship with us, and a nominated administrator. I know Jacqueline has worked with us a lot, and Keith's team have worked a lot with us in terms of that rollout across the HSE, but certainly if it is something that if you're not directly with HSE, or if you have not set anything up in relation to your own department or division, I would say reach out to us. We have a website, register. Do you know what? I'll put it up at the end rather than trying to remember. I think it's register searches, but I don't want to quote it. I'll put it into the chat. However, if you do that, we will be able to initiate that process with you. I'm going to go back out now, and I'm going to just make sure I've touched off all of the additional services. So we have search in the register. We've complaints. I didn't go into it, but you have the complaints functionality, or complaints tile down the bottom here, where you can access information in relation to complaints and investigations. Making an objection, I touched on briefly across the two different arrangements, the EPA, both at first and second stage, and the CDMA. Supervision, as I said, touched on that briefly. My colleague Kate Frown, who's the head of supervision, is actually on here supporting me with some Q&A. So you couldn't get a better person if you have any questions specific to the reporting requirements of an individual. If they are a decision supporter, she'll be able to help or answer that. But again, if you go into the specific arrangement that you are looking for information on, you will find information within that in relation to monitoring and supervision. And then finally, panels. We maintain 3 panels. We maintain decision-making representatives that are appointed by the court, and we also maintain a panel of general and special visitors as well. So if I move on to my next slide, these are all the additional resources, the other stuff that come up. I'm conscious of my time. I've got about 9 minutes left, I think. So these are all other bits and pieces that, again, you might need throughout your day-to-day in terms of interacting with different people, or you might also find of interest in your own personal life if you're thinking about putting advanced planning in place. So this isn't an exhaustive list, but if I go back out to our resources, you will see here all of these additional pieces. So first and foremost, codes of practice. There are 13 codes of practice, and they're all laid out here. Each one, I have a little drink of water. Each code of practice has its own individual thought. The way these work is there is an overarching code, which is the code of practice for supporting decision-making and assessing capacity. It's the biggest code, but it is an absolute must for anybody. Certainly when someone starts in the DSS, that's one of the first documents that they're given to go off and read. It is a very well-written document, and it breaks down a lot of complex a lot of complex information in a very distilled manner. From that, then, that serves as the sort of the foundation or the basis for all of the other codes. So you'll see here that you'd have codes for the different roles. So for attorneys, co-decision makers, decision-making assistants, DHRs, and so on. You also then have codes for healthcare professionals, independent advocates, legal practitioners, financial service providers, and so on. So if you're going near the codes, make it your priority to read the code of practice for supported decision making and assessing capacity first, and then from there you can use whatever individual codes are relevant to you. You can use them then as a reference guide as needed. So coming back out of codes, some additional pieces that we have here. The wards, of course, I'm sure most people on this call will know, but wardship was abolished under the new legislation. There was a 3-year time frame for wards to exit wardship, and that deadline is coming up in April, 26th of April. So there is obviously a lot of focus on people leaving wardship at the moment. There is information there, and there's also information on the Court Services website, but you will find a fair bit of information within the Wards of Court section. And again, it's lined out in certain questions, and if you work your way through, you'll find additional hyperlinks as well. So again, that drill down fashion again. Easy reads. We have a couple of easy reads. So we have our main My Decisions, My Choice document as an easy read, and we also have an easy read on the Act itself as well. We do plan on producing a lot more easy reads. We're trying to bed down a lot of the guidance just in normal format, just ensure that we're happy with it before we produce an easy read on it. But certainly, I would say, in addition to the pieces that are there, we will continue to publish. And if there is something that you find would be of benefit to you as an easy read, I tell you to reach out to our information service team and give them that feedback, because we're always trying to leverage the feedback that we get directly from services and service providers. One of the beefiest areas in this is guidance materials. So I'm just going to click into this for a second. Within guidance materials, you're going to find a lot of written documentation alongside for each of the specific arrangements. So again, these are PDFs. These are kind of printable documents in relation to all the different. You might have things like, for example, the management of expenses, claims, and remuneration. If you were a panel member, for example, you might have the annual report guidelines for decision-making representative. So that will cover off, if it's property and affairs, what's your 3-month obligations in terms of reporting? What's your annual obligation in terms of reporting? There's also additional things, banking arrangements as a decision supporter. Again, a lot of those things I mentioned with regards to the register, searching the register, guide to search the register for your organisation, that's all in there. Setting up, I think I said I'd give you an email address, Aoife will kill me, who looks after register. You'll have a step-by-step guide to actually setting up your register account in there. So you can access that, and that will get you going in terms of accessing our register as an organisation. You also have our complaints and investigations procedures. And I mentioned this earlier, this is the procedure for processing an expedited enduring power of attorney application, or those that are not on a specified form. So that's the urgent EPA process there within our guidance materials. So again, it's very, very important that if an EPA is being created and time is of the essence, do not submit an application and then just wait patiently for the DSS to come back to you. This process will bring you through exactly what needs to happen and how to get it expedited and moved along. And then finally, there's some sample forms in there for recording capacity assessments for CDMAs and EPAs as well. What else do we have? Really quickly, I've only got 4 minutes left. So finishing off in this section, 3 final sections. I'm not going to go into key terms. Forms. A lot of people ask about forms. Where can I get the hard copy? Where can I get the physical paper document? Under this section, where you have forms, we have specimen forms of all of our different arrangements. Again, I'll just use EPA as an example. The statement of capacity, the arrangement template, the certified copy, the legal practitioner statement, and so on. They're all for demonstration purposes only. You can't print them out, complete them, and send them in to us. We won't accept them. All applications for our arrangements have to be completed on My DSS portal. However, acknowledging that a lot of people will require either one, additional assistance in doing that, you can access our EPA help desk, or 2, are just completely unable to do it, whether that's maybe signal digital ability, whether it's a disability, whatever it is, we have a policy which manages accessing our manual forms. That is not in this section. I cover it. There's a dedicated tile for it, but that just covers off if someone needs a manual document, how they go about getting that document. And the reason we do that is just to ensure that whoever needs the manual process gets it, and that they get parity of service with those who can do it digitally. If we don't put that sort of management approach in place, we found we were overwhelmed with paper documents, and as a result, those who genuinely needed them ultimately ended up suffering because we just didn't have the resources to process that much paper. We've learned that also from our other jurisdictions, to be very conscious of the amount of paper that we're accepting in. I know Birmingham have had Birmingham in the England and Wales jurisdiction. They've had a lot of challenges with paper documentation. So coming back out of the guidance materials, I touched on the forms. Accessibility policy, that's the document that I was just referring to, so you can find that in there. And finally, checklists. If you click into checklists, you will see for each of the arrangement types a document that you can print out and just work through it. Do I have X, Y, and Z? The system does do a lot of that. So if you're making an application, but obviously some people just like a checklist document. But when you do get to the point where you're generating all your forms off the portal, this is included in it. So it's just kind of like, when you're completing your passport application, have you got X, Y, and Z? Finally, the only other two areas of interest that I'm just going to touch on are legislation and publications. Publications you find up the top here. It's not in resources. They're generally found in news and events, but there are a couple of very wordy documents in there. Specifically at the moment, the EPA pack. It's a 5-part pack, which is a real handholder in terms of bringing people through all the things they need to think about in terms of initial conversations all the way up to, notification and beyond and so on. So that's in there. I am going to come back to that in a second as to why it's up there and not in our guidance. And the other thing which is kind of buried away is if you click into the About Us section, you will find legislation. This is where you will find all of the bits of relevant legislation that are associated with the Act, including the original Act, the amendments, the consolidated version, all the commencement orders, the regulations. So again, talking about the register and other items there in the regulations. And you also find a lot of the court rules. So handy point to know if you just need to access all of that legislative stuff. And that's it from a resource perspective. I'm just going to very quickly go into the My DSS intro. So My DSS, I mentioned earlier, at any time, no matter where you are on the website, I could click through any page and you will see that this bar up here always stays consistent. You will see the My DSS login up here. So if I click on that, it's going to bring you into the login page. And that's like a lot of other portals that you might use for other aspects of your life. There are two ways of accessing our system. You can do it through MyGovID. We leverage the DSP's MyGovID system, through which about 70% of people access our services. If you're fully verified MyGovID, you access it. You're fully verified, you're done. It's easy and peasy. However, if you don't use MyGovID, you can do a verification directly with us. We do need to know who people are in terms of setting up arrangements. It's part of our DPI that process was established. However, you can do that by creating a form, not creating a form, filling in a form that we have there, and the link is there, and the team set up a portal account for you, and they reach out to you then with the login details for that. Let me see, what else do I need to touch on in My DSS? I think that is it. The My DSS help, very important. If I just go back to the website really, really quick, on the home page, you will see My DSS help. So if I just click on that, you'll be brought into a list of FAQs, online portal help, their documents. You also have how-to videos, and you also have that an ID verification form in there as well. So there are all the resources for finding your way around the My DSS portal. My last two slides are very, very quick, so I won't take long to cover them. 3 slides. Just actually, I'm going to leave that slide for the moment. The upcoming enhancements. We have a dedicated EPA microsite launching shortly. We're hoping to do a soft launch of it in the coming weeks before we launch it fully. That is going to take a large portion of information off the website in relation to EPAs. You'll still be able to access them through links. But the idea is that people have a dedicated site to go to. We've done this over in the mental health side of the MHC, and it has worked. So we are creating that dedicated EPA microsite to try and just strip off that advanced planning piece. And I think they're going to have a nice website name. It'll be My EPA or something similar to that as well. We're also doing a full review and restructuring the DSS website throughout 2026. So I suppose, as I said, you'll have to have me back at some stage because I'll have to redo a lot of this. But the idea is that we just want to I suppose sharpen up the person's journey through the website, really helping them understand, I am this person, this is what I'm looking for, and this is the journey I take through the website. So that really that UX UI piece, and also continuous improvements to the My DSS portal. When we launched the portal, we really had to launch it as a minimal viable product. We've been making constant tweaks and amendments and improvements to it. For example, we're going to be doing a large launch of a reporting and compliance functionality later on, probably in around May, which is going to be huge. And then from that, then following that, we'll be reverting to doing some other changes and improvements that we have backed up. So I suppose keep an eye. If there's something that's not in the portal currently, it might be something that we have in the pipeline over the course of the next few years as we manage that volume going ahead or forward. And then finally, support and information. If there's anything I didn't cover here today, if there's anything that you missed, contact us. We have a very well resourced and dedicated information team. They are on the phones Monday to Friday from 9 to 4 p.m. They take in the region of about 600-700 calls a week, and similar in terms of emails. And they get back to you very, very quickly, and generally hold time is less than a minute or two, so you won't be waiting long during most portions of the day. The number is there, +353 0121 2119750, and that is a free phone number, so you're not going to be running up any bills if you're running off a private phone number. We also have the queries address, which I believe will be shared probably in answer to a couple of questions or later on in the presentation, but you can contact us there, queries@decisionsupportservice.ie. Response time on that, generally about 3 working days, sometimes quicker, sometimes slightly slower. If it's urgent, don't email us, ring us. Sometimes people email us and hope we get back immediately. It's just not possible with the volume of queries we deal with. Or you can submit a query directly through the My DSS portal. That's also an option there. So whistle stop tour. Thank you very much for listening to me. I hope I was able to answer some of your questions. But please, if you have any questions, submit them. I'll be here answering them in the background. So I'll hopefully be able to help you out throughout the rest of the webinar. I'm going to pass you back over to Kiva now, who will take the mic back.
Thank you. Thanks a million, Ian. There's a lot of information there, a lot for people to take on board, and not least our wonderful interpreters who had to keep up with the speed. So I'll just remind our speakers, and when we're on the panel, and our next speaker in particular, to just be mindful of our interpreters who have a big task to try and keep up with very dense information. So our next speaker is Jacqueline Grogan, and Jacqueline is going to take you through the assisted decision-making website, and then our range of learning resources. And just to remind everyone who missed me at the beginning about if you want CPD or cert of attendance, it's adm@hse.ie. Just to repeat that, that's adm@hse.ie, and you can email us afterwards in relation to that. The other thing I want to say before I hand over to Jacqueline, this is one of 9 webinars. So the first one today is about where you go to get the information. I know there's a lot of questions on the EPA, the Enduring Power of Attorney process. We will be having a specific webinar on that. And at the end of all of the speakers, I'll just make an announcement about the next 3, so you have those. And if there are particular webinars that you're interested in, please let us know. It's likely that we will have it covered. So we have the series will run until December of this year. So we're trying to cover as much as we possibly can, because we know there's a lot of practice issues for people. And as I said, there's huge interest in today's webinar, as there will be with others. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Jacqueline, and Jacqueline, just pay attention to your pace, just to help our interpreters. Thank you.
Thanks, Quiva. I think most of you probably know me from work that we do in the office, but it's great to kind of talk to you all today, and it's great to see such huge numbers in attendance today as well. So I'm Jacqueline Grogan. Just to say that following this webinar, we'll also produce kind of like a resource document that will have all of the links and kind of link you to the information that's been developed and been shared during the course of this webinar. So I'm going to introduce you to our website to start with. So our website address is www.assisteddecisionmaking.ie. And what I'll do is similar to Ian, I'm going to flip between a slide presentation here and the website. I'm really conscious that with the slides, the text is going to look quite small, so I'm not going to spend too much time on the slides, and I'll spend most of the time on the website instead. So when you go to www.assisteddecisionmaking.ie, you'll come to a page that looks like this. What you'll see is there are a few things here. At the top of the page, we have the Assisted Decision Making Capacity Act as amended. And if you click on that, what you will see is that there is a consolidated version of the Act. So that's an Act that includes all of the changes that were made in the Amendment Acts on top of the 2015 Act. Underneath that, there's a number of drop downs. So here, like latest news and upcoming events, update from the court service, resources, and multiple others, which I'll just talk you through on the main website here. So you'll see as well, we have a short explainer video. Actually, I'm going to see if I can do what Ian did and have a little spotlight. So here, we have a short explainer video on the Act. This is a short 7-minute long video, which includes the voices of people who use our services and people who work in our services talking about what the Act means to them. At the side of each of these, you'll have drop-down menus. So under latest news and upcoming events, you'll see that there's information about the annual report of the office, which we published this year, towards the end of last year, and there'll be a new one that will come out for 2025. We also have frequently asked questions on the Act as well. There's information here on the online training for the functional assessment of capacity. And just to say, when you click into here to access the training, just give me a second because I have a slide on that. It will bring you into the DSS Moodle site where you'll be able to register and sign up in order to complete that online functional capacity assessment training. It takes about 4 hours, but you can kind of go in and out of it as you wish. And there's information on how to register, how to access the training, and everything else. There's our email address. I know we'll be kind of saying it throughout the webinar, so adm@hse.ie. That's kind of your port of call if you have questions about the Act, if you've got questions about what I'm talking you through here as well. There's also information about the in-person training, and my colleague Joanne is on the panel as well, so she can answer questions around that and who can attend the training. So it's open at the moment to the registered, to prescribed classes of professionals and registered medical doctors as prescribed for in the Act. This follows on from what Ian was talking about. So we do have a section here where we've developed guidelines for approved organisations who are looking to access and search the Decision Support Service Register. Again, if it's something you have an interest in, you can email us, contact us on adm@hse.ie. And if you click that link, you'll be brought into a section where it will bring you into the document that we developed, which is up on the National PPPG guidelines. We also have information from the court service, and actually in my next slide I'll talk to you a bit more about the information that's available on the court service website, and that website just jumped. But again, of interest here, you'll see that there are the links for the Word version and the PDF version of the Part 5 templates for undertaking functional assessments of capacity. These have been developed for guidance purposes. They're not a legal document, but they are widely accepted by the courts if they're completed accurately and correctly. So if you click into that, it will bring you in and download either the Word version or the PDF version of that document. We also have a section titled Resources. And if you click into that, it'll bring you into, there's a recording of the Act and a number of other ADM resources here. So if you click into the ADM resources, it should bring you into a document that we developed. And we'll update that following this webinar here as well. Bear with me 2 seconds. This is taking... Okay. We also have a number of presentations, videos and e-learning programs on the Act, and there's links there for that too. Up until 2024, we would have hosted a large number of webinars on the Act, and all of the recordings for the webinars are available here. So you'll see that, and they're all titled. So you see the ones from 2024 and ones from 2023 as well. This one here in 2022 was a webinar series that we developed in preparation for commencement and implementation of the Act. And there's a number of kind of really interesting and still very valid webinars included in that, looking at things like unwise decisions, when to contact the Decision Support Service and others. And obviously this webinar series will build on top of that as well. And at the bottom of the page, we have our newsletters as well. Just to draw your attention, at the side here, at the drop-down menu, you'll see that there's a wide variety of kind of sub-menus that you can go into. And there's also a section on consent, which is another piece of work we do in our office. And that has the up-to-date national consent policy. So it's really important because consent and capacity are very closely interlinked. So have a read of the updated national consent policy, and also information about universal access on people with disabilities. The only other thing I want to show you on our website is if you click on this section here about resources on the Act, it will bring you into a much more detailed section on the resources. So it has information about the e-learning programme, and I'll show you in a second where to find that on HSE Land. It also has recordings of conferences and other events that we've hosted as well. So you'll see here, these are all the recordings from a conference that we held down in Cork in December 2024. You'll get all the recordings of the sessions and the slides relating to each of those sessions as well. We also hosted an event in February with Judge John O'Connor. And again, you can access the slides and the videos there for that too. Back in 2021, we published a book called Personal and Professional Reflections on the Act. If you click on this, it's free. You can download it. You can read individual chapters that might be of interest to you, and you can look at that as well. And around the ADM implementation plan, which we're going to be in the process of updating as well. There's other resources down here. We have a poster. So this here, you can get access to the poster that we developed, which you can print off or download yourself or get professionally printed and hang up in your office or your services, and other resources that are available at the bottom as well. Now, I'm just going to double check that, similar to Ian, that I've gone through everything. The guidelines, the capacity statements, the webinars, and where to get all the other information. Oh yeah, we have a section on advanced healthcare directives as well. They'll give you information about what advanced healthcare directives are, and you'll see here that there's a link to the interactive form was developed by the Decision Support Service. So if you've got people in your services who are interested in developing an AHD or Advanced Healthcare Directive, if they click on that, it will bring them into the interactive form in order to be able to complete an Advanced Healthcare Directive. The only other thing I want to touch on, and these are kind of my last two slides, we do have a number of e-learning programs on HSE Land specific to the Act. So obviously if you go to www.hseland.ie and then you sign in or register, I know it can be quite difficult to kind of navigate the site. So the easiest way to find our programs is to type in assisted decision making. And when you do, you'll get the first three that come up will be these three modules here. So one on advanced healthcare directives, one on guiding principles, and one on working with decision supporters. You can complete them in any order that you wish, but I think if you do them in order 1, 2, and 3, it'll probably make a bit more sense to you as you're working through it. And if you scroll a little bit further down the results that come up, you'll also see that there's a module called Supporting Decision Making in Health and Social Care. There's 3 modules in that as well, one of which is looking at kind of the functional assessment of capacity as well. I'd encourage you to complete them, to share them with your staff, and encourage staff members and colleagues to complete them as well. They're really good introductory pieces on the Act. One of the big things that we're going to be looking at doing this year, similar to Ian in terms of selling what we're looking to do, we're going to develop a hub on HSE land over the next few months, which will have all of these, all of our e-learning programs and everything for our office housed in it, and we'll be able to signpost you to other sites, other places to get information, and other pieces of information that might be of relevance to particular areas of the Act, and to other programmes of work within our office. That's me for the moment. You'll be seeing me slightly later on. All those slides, they'll include the hyperlinks and everything in it. And as I said, we will develop a resource document that you'll be able to use and to click into to be able to get the information that you need to direct you to specific areas and sections. Thanks, Caoimhe.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And I know there's a few questions in the question function that relate to the next bit of your talk in relation to legal aid, so we'll pick those up again. Just to reiterate before we move on to our next two speakers, if you need CPD or certificate of attendance, it's ADM at hse.ie. So just to say that again, ADM at hse.ie. So our next two speakers are Ultan Hines and Louise, who are from the Nursing Home Support Office, who are going to talk about the specific resources that are available to people in relation to the changes that came about from the Assisted Decision Making Capacity Act, which impacted on the Nursing Home Support Scheme. So I'm going to hand it over to Ultan and Louise, who will ably talk you through these changes. Thanks so much.
Thanks for joining us today. So I'm Ultan Hines from the Nursing Home Support Scheme National Office, and I'm joined by Louise Duffy, my colleague, and Louise manages the Ancillary State Support Office here in the National Office. So today we're going to cover what is NHSS, and I suppose just to be clear, this is not a session on NHSS itself. It's very much focused on how it impacts on DMROs and on the decision support process itself. That discussion around helping people fill out applications, that's for another day. We'll look at the key changes under the Assisted Decision Making Capacity Act that impacted NHSS. We'll look at who can apply for NHSS, and specifically focusing on when a DMRO is required. And then where to get NHSS information on the DMR process, and we'll be looking specifically at the application form and at the HSE website, and also giving you some details on further relevant contact information. Okay, so just to put it in context then, what is the Nursing Home Support Scheme? So it's a scheme of financial support to clients who require long-term residential care, and it's covered under the Nursing Home Support Scheme Act 2009. We're currently supporting 24,260 clients across the country at ICRA registered nursing homes, both public and private. There's a national awaiting funding list, and the maximum time of that is 4 weeks, and it's issued weekly in strict chronological order. The average length of stay for residents is 3 years, and the 2026 funding is in excess of 1.3 billion euros. So it's a co-funded scheme, so that 1.3 billion is what the HSE pays as state support and ancillary state support, and the client also makes a contribution which is made directly to the nursing home, and that's their weekly client contribution. So in principle, the applicant chooses their nursing home, and there's money follows the resident process in place, whereas we pay their contribution of state support on their behalf to the nursing home. Okay, so for the purpose of what we're talking about today then, there's 4 parts of the application form. There's a care needs assessment application, and that's to decide under the Act whether a person does or does not require long-term residential care to be funded under the scheme. There's an application for state support. Then there's an application for ancillary state support, which is optional, and this is known as the nursing home loan. And this is the reason for most DMRO applications, generally and specifically for Fair Deal. Now, there's a 4th option as well, which is an application for the 3-year cap on family businesses or farms, and this is an optional benefit. Again, family successor must be appointed, and in specific situations, we do need a DMRO to complete that process, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So there are very, very few applications for this element, and certainly very few driving DMROs. However, it is a requirement in very specific cases. So once an application is filled, it should be forwarded to the local nursing home support office, and there's a list of the NHSOs on the application form and also on the HSE website. Okay, so let's look at the key changes then, just to remind ourselves, and I'm sure the majority of you will have heard myself and other people speaking about these over the last number of years, but just to remind ourselves. So the decision-making order replaces the court-appointed care representative. So previously, if a person didn't have capacity and somebody was applying on their behalf for ancillary state support, for ASS, they would get a care rep. That has now ceased, obviously, and a DMRO is required. The second change relates to the range of those who can act as a specified person, and we look at when a specified person can and can't act in a minute. But the following can act as a specified person. So this is where the client doesn't have the capacity to make an application, and they're applying for state support only. So the applicant's spouse or partner, their child if over 18, and I suppose the key point is that the niece and nephew can no longer act as a specified person, a registered medical practitioner, nurse, or a registered social worker. So the specified person's role and responsibility has also changed, and a specified person, they have serious obligations under the Act, and the principles with regard to specified persons are laid out there. And again, we include these details in summary on the NHSS application form. Okay, so who can apply for Fair Deal? So the applicant themselves. So if the applicant has capacity to apply, or at least to indicate that they wish to apply, they are making the application, and they're the only people who can make the application. Now, it may well be that a family member, another person will be assisting them significantly, and realistically they could be doing the vast majority of work in filling out the form and gathering documentation, etc. But to be clear, if the applicant has capacity, that is the person who submits the application, and it's the only person who can submit the application. So if the applicant hasn't capacity then, and if it's for state support, a specified person can apply. And again, we've listed those people. Alternatively, a person who is legally appointed to act on the person's behalf can also apply, and that could be an attorney under EPOA, a decision-making representative, or a committee of award of court. And obviously the latter is being unwound at the moment. Okay, so when is a DMRO required for NHSS then? So for state support, generally speaking, either the person applies or a specified person steps forward, and they do not need to be appointed by a court, or otherwise they can act because of their relationship to the applicant. So if the applicant doesn't have capacity to apply and a specified person is not available to act, and this would be extremely rare, these would be extremely rare cases. However, in that case, a DMRO would be required. The vast majority of DMROs that are being primarily driven by NHSS are as a result of an application for ancillary state support. So that is the application for the nursing home loan, and that's generally where a person has property, they have a principal residence, they have other property, and their weekly client contribution, part of that is based on the value of that property. They decide not to pay that element at the moment they apply for loan, and the HSE pays that on their behalf, and the fund, that money is recouped afterwards by revenue from their estate, or from their estate with their partner if they so wish to get a further deferral. Again, the 3-year cap benefit on farms, family farms and businesses. Again, if the applicant or another member of the couple does not have capacity to authorise the HSE to complete the approval process, a DMRO will be required, giving them the authority to do that. There's other issues, I suppose, just to flag with you. There's management of NHSS clients' financial assets, and I suppose when you look at the content of DMROs, of the orders themselves, there will be a range of things. So if NHSS is driving that, there will be a range of other items as well, including managing bank accounts, managing properties, managing other types of investment funds. So some of those are not directly required by the NHSS, but certainly they should be considered in any DMRO application. And for instance, if a DMRO had the authority to sell property, for instance, or wish to do that, or even to rent property, that's something that they should be putting in the order when they're seeking the order in the first instance. So it might be one step beyond NHSS, or one step beyond the initial application, or it might be something that's happening beside it, but it does impact on the finances. For instance, it might impact on paying nursing homes, for instance. So just one to consider as well if somebody is actually submitting a DMRO. Okay, so where to get more information? So firstly, we're going to look at the NHSS application form, and then we'll look at the HSE website. So the application form is something of a weighty tome, I suppose. It's about 32 or 34 pages, and it looks like this. Basically, it's an application form and an information location. So there's a lot of information out there. Basically, we talk you through what NHSS is, and we talk you through what we're looking for and why at each stage of the application process. So it's available from the HSE website. You can download the application form there. We're not in a position, unfortunately, at the moment to do online applications. However, that will be coming hopefully the end of next year. Nursing home support offices and also all acute hospitals in terms of discharge planning will have application forms. And as I said, it's both an application form and a reference guide. Okay, so the contents of the application form, as I say, it's color coded there to guide the applicant through. The application, the care needs assessment, financial assessment, application for state support, section 5 or part 5 is ancillary state support. So again, everybody will be filling out section 1 to 4. Part 5 is optional, part 6 is optional, and part 7 is specifically for co-decision making agreement. We'll speak about that in a second. So the sections are color coded. So DMRO or EPOA and a specified person, their approval and signature requirements are highlighted at part 2 and 4 of the forms in particular, and also very definitely at part 5 and 6 if they're required at that point. And in terms of the part 7, then, if there is a co-decision making agreement in place, obviously the co-decision maker needs to co-sign the Fair Deal application form, even though the applicant themselves will also be signing it. So the application is null and void if it's not signed by the co-decision maker. So again, if you're in a position where you're assisting a person, you know, if you're a member of HSE staff or another organisation, and you're assisting a person who's doing it, if they have a co-decision making agreement in place, the co-decision maker must sign at section 7, or the application is null and void. Okay, so just to look then at sections where, for instance, this is section 2A here, where person is applying for care needs assessment. So again, if the person doesn't have capacity, the person signing on their behalf signs, and they must indicate under which legal authority they're doing so. So either a specified person, spouse, partner, client, child, registered medical practitioner, nurse, social worker, committee, enduring power of attorney, or a DMRO. So again, you'll see at the bottom there, please enclose documentary evidence. So we will need copies of the DMRO or a copy of the EPOA to confirm that, firstly, you were generally authorised, and secondly, that you have the specific authority to undertake the tasks that are required under the Act. We'll look at that in a minute or two as well. Okay, so let's move on to the HSE website then. So again, it contains a lot of information and instruction on Fair Deal. So it will work through how you apply, how we make decisions on the applications, information on how to apply for a DMRO and what is required with a DMRO for NHSS applications. So again, if you go to the Fair Deal website, and if you put into the search engine within the HSE website, if you just put in Fair Deal, it'll bring you directly to this page. And again, it works through here, each of these pages, or each of these links here work through sections. So if we just look at the next one, how to apply. So what we have here is if you're getting appointed as a DMR, this page, this section here will work through generally what you need to do, but specifically what's relevant for Fair Deal. And Louise, you might want to talk about the practicalities of that in terms of what you see in terms of applications coming in and making sure that the DMRO is actually correct and give people full authority.
Thanks, Ultan. Good afternoon, everybody. And yes, I suppose it's just important to reiterate what Ultan has just said, that, you know, we're looking at the ancillary state support applications and the 3-year CAP family successor. And I suppose particularly around, you know, the signatures and the application and who is appointed as the decision-making representative. So as Ultan has rightly said, the information is on our HSE website. The key thing is understanding what you're applying for. You know, that if you require the nursing home loan or the 3-year CAP family successor and excuse me, and the client has lost capacity, you need a DMRO or an enduring power of attorney. So for example, if you're applying for the DMRO and the slide that's just in front of you there, that has suggested text that's relevant to the NHSS, and it's provided on the website pages. So this is the suggested text that will help you. So if you take that text, for example, and you put it on your application form, that most likely will, you know, be correct when you send it in through the court. So what we're looking for then is when the successful DMR is appointed and they have their court order, that when it comes into the HSE, in order for us to process the ancillary state support loan and ensure that everything legal is in place, that we're looking for the correct sections of that DMR order. So for example, again, the ancillary state support is section 14 of the legislation, the NHSS Act 2009, and then the new Amendment Act in relation to the 3-year cap family successor. So again, the information is on the website, and again, this is suggested text that will help and assist you when you're making your DMR application.
Okay, thanks, Louise. So again, just to point out, on that page there on the website, there's a number, it works down. There's 3 sections there, each of the applications. So if you click on those, literally copy the text, put it onto the DMR application to the court, that text will be correct. We don't necessarily have to see this exact text, but if we see this text, we're absolutely sure that you have the authority, or the DMRO has the authority. Other text is suitable. I think, Louise, we're not really seeing that number anymore where we've had to go back and say, I'm sorry, you don't actually have authority. Initially we did.
We did. Yeah, and now we really, I suppose, have seen that it has improved, because unfortunately we don't, and neither does the applicant. We want an application to be processed as quickly as possible without any delays. We don't want to have to go back to DMRs or family members for them in turn to have to go back to court to have it amended. But we are thankfully seeing that there is more improvements in terms of the DMR orders that's coming in. So people are completing the information correctly, so therefore it's coming through correct to ourselves. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that. Okay, so as I said there, the application form and the website, the 2 primary sources of information to support a person through the process for NHSS purposes. So just to look then, I suppose, in terms of if you're appointed a decision-making representative and you're dealing with a fair deal application, just generally the entitlements and obligations to act under the Act, that this is what it actually entails. So, generally you will have the entitlement to complete and submit the NHSS application form, sometimes for state support, generally for ancillary state support or 3-year cap on farms. And just to note, actually, this may include taking charge of an already submitted state support NHSS application by a specified person. So it does happen that it's decided that a person does need long-term residential care. A medical social worker, a nurse, or even a person who's eligible to be a specified person in the family will submit the application for state support and also acknowledge or identify that they're applying also for ancillary state support. And it's important that they do that at that time, even though they won't be able to close out the process. They should apply at that stage. And then when the DMRO is appointed, the specified person loses their authority and the DMRO takes responsibility for the full application at that point. That person, the DMR, will be liaising with the Nursing Home Support Office to complete the application process. They're entitled to review the NHS's decision on entitlement to support the Act and the calculation of weekly client contribution. So if they're not happy with our decision or they're not happy with the client contribution, they can appeal that decision to the HSE Statutory Independent Appeals Officer. And then the post-NHSS application decisions, and this would include advising the HSE or advising the Nursing Home Support Office of any material change in circumstances. So that could include extra income or assets, or maybe the death of a partner, etc. So anything that's significant, the NHSO would need to know that to review the application process or review the application. They also have the right to seek a financial reassessment after 12 months and to review any further decisions that the HSE takes and to consider an appeal to the Statutory Independent Appeals Officer. So again, just to reiterate, the DMRO must include authority to act on NHSS issues, and authorisations must be included for specific NHSS elements, and that's why we have the suggested text on the website. If you use that text, the DMR is covered. NHSS approval does not mean that the applicant can be admitted to a nursing home. That's a separate issue. NHSS is a scheme of financial support only. And again, just to be aware that anybody who is appointed as a decision-making representative, there is also a contract of care that will be required by the nursing home to be signed, and the DMRO will most probably be signing that. Again, it's separate to NHSS approval, but that is a legal document, and they should be very clear what they're signing there. Also, just to flag as part of that, this concept of social charges, which are extra charges that private nursing homes charge, they're not funded under NHSS. And again, details would be included in the contract of care. So generally then, we've gone through the HSE website just for more information, the NHSS application form. HSE Live, our free phone number, will also be able to advise applicants on the application process generally. And again, the local nursing home support office, the application will be made to them. They'll make the decision on the applicants and they'll be able to provide support getting that application through. And obviously we already have the court service and the DSS websites there. So Caoimhe, that's our presentation. So we'll hand back to you if you don't mind. Thanks very much.
Super, thank you, Louise. And ultimately, we have a lot of questions, so we might pick up some of the additional questions in our section on the question time. There's some additional ones that we might pick up. So Jacqueline, you're going to close us out in terms of some additional sites that people and there's a couple of questions in relation to legal aid, if you can address those in your presentation, and then after Jacqueline, then we'll revert to the full panel, and there's some additional questions that we'll pick up. I just want to thank, we've a number of people in the background, we've a number of people answering a substantial number of questions, and I'd still encourage you to put questions into the question section as well, and we'll try and address them as best we can. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Thanks, Caoimhe. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to touch on some other websites that it might be of interest for you to access. This is not an exhaustive list. These are the ones that we tend to share with people when they contact us directly about different things. So I thought it'd be really important for us to kind of point you in their direction. So the first website I'm going to introduce you to is the court service website. I've got a hyperlink at the bottom here. So it's courts.ie/hubs/assisted decision making. It's a bit complicated, but what we'll do, as I said, is with the resource document that we develop, we'll share it with you. So I'm hoping you can now see the website itself. So when you get into the site, this is what you'll see. This is your landing page, and underneath it has a number of different sections where you can see different links. So there is a section on what is assisted decision making, how to make a capacity application, complaints and appeals around the Act, all of the court forms that you're going to need in order to make an application for a decision-making representative under the Act, and information on the different decision-making agreements as well. So what I'll do in the first instance is we'll click into what assisted decision-making is, and that will bring you into a page that just has a description of what the Act is, what is capacity, how is capacity assessed. So it's just background information around it, but it will also bring you into the information about the capacity assessment reports as well. The section on how to make a capacity application has a number of relevant documents in it that are helpful for both yourselves and for people that you're maybe supporting to make an application. So it has information here on making it, where you need to go in the High Court, what you need to do, where all the relevant forms are. And then at the bottom of the page, it has 3 guides, which are about helping people understand the process. So the first one is about before you make the application, so what you need to consider if you're thinking about making an application under the Act. The second guide here is around completing the application form, so what information needs to be put into certain sections, what's involved in the statement of particulars forms, and then at the bottom you have the bit about what happens after you've done it. So what do you do with the information that you have? Where do you send it to? Who does it get sent to? What the process is afterwards. I'm just trying to get out of here. So again, as I said, you click in here, it has information on complaints and appeals, but the other section I'm going to show you in this website, because I'm really cognizant of time as well, is there's a section specifically about the forms. So it has a link to all of the forms that you require to complete an application. So the affidavit of service, the support of an application form, the notice party, the actual application itself. And that guide that I described to you at the beginning will talk through which forms need to be completed and when, and they should hopefully help the process of completing the application forms. I'm going to jump over to my presentation just to make sure that I've covered everything. I think I have. And as I said, these slides will all be shared with you. So just to say, this is what the guide looks like. I think it's about 8 pages for the guide for how to make an application. And it steps you through it step by step on what you need to do. The next website I'm going to introduce you to is the Legal Aid Board website, because obviously they kind of go hand in hand. So under the Act, anybody making an application under the Act is entitled to legal aid. And I'm just trying to see if I can move some stuff. So this is the Legal Aid Board's website. They've recently updated it and have put new information on the website as well recently. So if you scroll down here, it tells you about the decision supports under the Act, what the role of the Legal Aid Board is around capacity applications, so you can see what they do, and also around people who are being discharged from wardship as well. So people can access, wards and relevant persons can access support from the Legal Aid Board when making an application. It tells you what they can provide, and it gives you information about priority applications as well. So contacting your local law centre in order to get support around applications under the Act. And there's a list on the Legal Aid Board website of all of the law centres that you can contact. There's an information here about cost recovery as well. So there is a kind of a clawback provision under the Act, and this explains what's happening with that. But recently, they've also produced a number of new leaflets. So, and again, these are probably of interest to yourselves. So there's one on, do you need legal advice about it? One on supporting people with reduced capacity. And then they have developed a number of videos to watch called Your Voice, Your Rights, which talks through the Act, what happens when you meet the solicitor, kind of legal support to put decisions in place, and other things. There's also information at the bottom about next steps and how to contact your local law centres. So if you click on this link, it will bring you into the list of all of the law centres. And it will at the side here, you'll see there's one in every county, and it will tell you about what the function of those law centres are and how best to contact them. The next website I'm going to introduce you to is the Sage Advocacy website. Again, this is one that we would refer people to fairly regularly for a number of different reasons. They have a section at the top here specifically called Resources, and there's a number of sections under the resource arm here. The first one I'll bring you into is their specific section on assisted decision making. In this section, they have videos. There's a number of relevant links that might be of interest to you as well, and also specific information about different sections of the Act, so the functional approach to capacity and supporting decision making as well. They have a very helpful section on decision making, applying to the court to become a decision making representative. And again, it kind of talks it through from this kind of before you apply at the beginning. And it kind of goes through to the importance of the voice of the person in the court, the role of the advocate in the process as well. And it also brings information about kind of things that you need to take into consideration when you're making an application to the court. We would use this an awful lot when we're kind of for people who are maybe considering going down the route of applying for a decision-making representative, and we would point people in the direction of that, just to kind of step them through it. On their website as well, they also have a section called Legal Panel. We know that kind of trying to find solicitors to support applications is really important. And what Sage Advocacy did was they contacted a number of organisations and legal practitioners to see if they'd be willing to have their information shared on this. And what you'll find is that there's a list of different solicitors in different counties that might be willing to support people who are applying for decision-making representation, or not for enduring powers of attorney in particular. Now, where has my slides gone? Bear with me. Okay, so kind of covered the Legal Aid Board and Sage. Inclusion Ireland also have a huge section on their website specifically around the Assisted Decision Making Act as well. The website address is at the bottom. They have a wonderful video which kind of talks about the importance of the Act to people with intellectual disabilities. They have a number of resources on that page as well. So kind of looking at everyday situations around decision making as well. If you click into that, it brings you to this page, which has a table of contents, and there's a full page of information. So you'll see if you click into resources, you'll get things around training resources. There's easy to read guidance as well. So this is just a screenshot of the easy to read guidance that they developed with the Decision Support Service on the Act. The National Advocacy Service for People with Disabilities is another one that we would recommend. Their casebook from last year has an awful lot of cases in particular around the Act and how advocacy can support applications through the Act as well. So if you have a look at that, and it also has specific stories on the website around the role of the advocacy in the implementation of the Act. Family Carers Ireland have produced a guidance document on supporting family carers with the Act, and again the link will be on the slides and the documents when it's shared with you. And obviously the Irish Hospice Foundation have Think Ahead, which has an advanced healthcare directive built into it. So it's about the importance of kind of planning ahead for a time where you can't make decisions for yourself. So really important for people to kind of consider thinking about that, and it's a great resource to have. Final site I'm going to point you to is Safeguarding Ireland's website. Last year they would have done a kind of communications campaign specifically on the Act, and would have produced a number of videos which might be of interest to you, as well as a number of resources that you can share as well. I think that's it from me. As I said, that's not kind of a full kind of detail about all of the resources that are available, but there are ones that we certainly find helpful in our day-to-day work. If there are other resources that you're aware of that we maybe haven't mentioned, please email us and let us know. We'll add them into the resource document as we're developing them. We know that organisations are developing things all the time, so in order for us to keep it as up to date as possible, it'd be great if you let us know if you've developed anything new that you think should be included. Thanks, Caoimhe.
Great. So I might ask all the panel if you can turn your cameras on, and in the remaining time we have just to acknowledge the team have been answering questions for the last hour and a half. So I might start with yourself, Ian, and I might just group. There's three questions. One on a question on costs, like what do people do about costs, even if you could just give a steer on that. The second element is who to go to if you can't access a solicitor. I know we've had a number of questions on this. Where do they go? And then the third thing, I know you did address it in your presentation, but if you can come back to it again, a person does not have digital literacy. What do they do? What's the best advice? So there's three elements to that question, Ian, if you could pick that one up. And then just to give Ultan and Louise the heads up, I'll be asking you a couple of questions then on the NHSS. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Caoimhe. In relation to cost, so cost is not something that the DSS set or have an involvement in. The costs for our services are set by regulation. So, for example, the registration fee for an EPA is €30. The costs that the person is referring to in that question are, I assume, coming from the solicitor or their legal representation. So it isn't something that we have any control over, but certainly we do feed back into our department regularly. So that would be something that we can consider as part of that. The digital exclusion. My DSS, as I said, preferable for all applications. It will generally give the quickest application turnaround time. If people are struggling to use it or need help, as I mentioned, we have our EPA help desk team, very well resourced team. They're resourced so that they can step through blow by blow every single screen with a person. And the number for that and our email is on my slide deck, but I will answer one of the questions to make sure that they're there on the record as well. However, if a person absolutely cannot go that route, and they just don't have the digital skill set and they don't have the support to do it, contact us. We have our accessibility policy, and we do have manual processes. And the reason, as I mentioned during my earlier presentation, that we do that is to ensure that those genuine cases do receive parity of service and that they're getting their application turned around just as quick, because we do have finite resources. So we just try to target them as best as possible. Did I miss? Sorry. Access to legal services. So again, we do hear this quite often. People say they can't get a solicitor to do a legal practitioner statement, which is a requirement under the registration of an EPA. We have had nearly 8,000 applications with that statement completed. So people are definitely doing them. But if you are really struggling, again, contact us on that number. Often we have been able to source a solicitor. We do have some that actively allow us to say, they're providing these statements just through engagement with us, but we haven't been able to not find someone a solicitor yet. So if you're really struggling, or any of your clients are really struggling, contact us on our free phone number, and we will do our best to support you. But there certainly are solicitors completing the paperwork, as I said, representative of the 8,000 applications we've had to date. So.
Yeah, and just to say, we've a note from somebody in the chat there that says legal aid can be a help. So the legal aid service will be able to recommend people that are willing and able to do this. Another organisation, Sage Advocacy, have a list of solicitors who've given permission to have their details shared. Jacqueline just went through that there on that website, so that's another one. And then, so obviously the DSS, and you can always come to us and we can redirect to whoever will be available to do it. So yeah, I think just to reiterate, 8,000 people have got it, so it is possible to get that information. Thanks, Ian. Okay, I'm going to move over to Ultan and Louise, and I know you've answered it, but maybe just to reiterate again, there's a few questions about why were the niece and nephew removed from being able to apply for the nursing home loan. So if you could address that question.
So I suppose in the first instance, they were removed by the amendment to the Act, so it was a matter of the Oireachtas.
Okay.
I mean, the Oireachtas made a decision, we implemented that. That's really the short answer, actually.
That's the short answer, yeah. Okay, so just on that then, and it's a similar vein, there's a question about, is there any alternative to having to go down the route of a DMRO if the ASS is required? Any comments on that?
The path is clear. Either the person makes the application or a person with legal authority does it, and the amendment to the Assisted Decision Making Capacity Act in 23, the only option is a DMRO or an enduring power of attorney.
Enduring power of attorney. So it's important for people to get their enduring power of attorney done as soon as possible, I think is really what the message is. Yeah. Okay. So, but ultimately, at this point in time, there isn't any alternative. That is what it is at the moment. Yeah. Okay. And then just one last question for yourselves then. If the applicant doesn't have capacity and a specified person is applying for state support, should the NHS office or local placement forum seek a capacity assessment?
I mean, not necessarily, and no is the answer to that. I mean, we're operating on the basis that every application is truthfully submitted. The applicant will be receiving a care needs assessment, and if there's issues at that point over whether the person did or did not wish to have an application, or whether they had or did not have capacity, they'll be flushed through at that stage. So there is a protection there for people, but no, a capacity assessment is not required with an application.
Okay, so there's a question here. I don't know, Jacqueline, you might take this one, or even Ian. For an AHD, should a person ideally have the suggested text mentioned by Ultan like a person would for a DMRO? So Ultan, would you take that, and maybe Jacqueline may comment on that?
So my sense is, and this is obviously a non-legal opinion here, but my sense is that when you're applying for a DMRO, it's a very specific requirements at that point. I mean, generally the text is usable. I don't know if we need exactly that level of detail.
Yeah.
But certainly the text is a very, very good indicator of how you cover off the types of things that may need to be done.
Yeah. Ian, you might want to comment on that as well.
Yeah, a lot of our guidance covers what you should try to include in an AHD with regards to treatment decisions. So I can put in a couple of links in response to that specific question now when we finish this question.
Okay. Another question just in as well. Is it possible for an existing EPA to be challenged in court following the introduction of the capacity legislation? Ian, if you could take that one.
There's the objections period, and I believe there is a appeal to the result, the outcome of the objections decision, and then there's also, following that, if it's notified, there is the complaints process through us, so we're a complaints body, we can investigate complaints, and again there's a route to court based on the outcome of that, whatever the decision is to the complaint. So,
and say, for example, if it's and I know we'll be dealing with this in much more specific detail in our session on EPAs, but say it was an EPA that was created under the 1996 Act, where do complaints go in relation to that?
So thanks for saying that. So 96 EPAs, we're not responsible for them, we don't cover them. However, we do have one role, and that's in relation to complaints with regard to attorneys under the 96 Act. So for everything else, you would go back to the court services, but for complaints in relation to an attorney under a 96 EPA, you would come to the DSS complaints team and you would lodge your complaint with them.
Okay. Jacqueline, I might get you to address, there's a couple of questions about how do I go for legal aid? How do I know if I'm entitled to legal aid? And say I want the supports under the Act, like where do I go? What can I do in terms of legal aid? Thanks.
Okay, so in terms of legal aid, you go to your local legal aid centre. There is a statutory kind of obligation under the Act that anybody who's making an application for a decision-making representative or not making an application, any relevant person who is part of an application for a decision-making representative or who is a ward of court has a right to access legal aid. If it's a family member that's looking to access legal aid, then it'll all come down to the means test that happens for legal aid generally. So, but that's how you do it. Your local legal aid centre would be able to give you the best information, and it would all be taken on a case by case basis.
Okay, so I just want to maybe wrap it up at this point, because I think quite a substantial amount of questions have been addressed by people. I just want to acknowledge the work of our speakers. There's a lot of work to, I suppose, to be able to condense all the information into an hour and a half condensed session. There are a number of outstanding ones. We'll try and pick those up at in some of our other webinars. I want to just let you know the series, just what to expect for those that are interested. So the next one is going to be on wardship, on the discharge from wardship process. So if you have questions in relation to that, send them to us in advance. The one in March will be on enduring powers of attorney. In April, we'll be looking at capacity assessments. When are they necessary? May, we'll be looking at decision-making representation orders. June, we'll be looking at what is the inherent jurisdiction in the context of ADM. September, we will look at co-decision making arrangements and agreements. October, we'll look at advanced healthcare directives. And then in November, we'll look at reflections on what's happened since commencement. So kind of like a roundup in terms of some of the issues that are, and you know, maybe whether there's any amendments going to be considered, because there's a 5-year review of the Act, which will be coming up in 2027. So I just want to say thank you to, again, to all of our speakers, to all of our panel who were in the background answering questions, to particularly to our sign language interpreters who have an onerous task of keeping up, so to Caroline and Orla, and then to all of the team in our office who've done Trojan work to try and pull this together, and not last but not least, Tom, who we need, who's essential to keep the whole show running in terms of the technical support. If any of you, just to let you know, it is recorded and it will be made available. So for those that weren't able to make it, but those that may be in your teams that you want to share it with afterwards, we'd encourage you to do so. That's a good way for people to get the information. As I said, there's a lot of very, very detailed information here, so you might want to watch this a few times just to be able to, and there might be specific things that you need to come back to. Thanks everyone for your time today, and we'll see you at the next webinar next month. Thanks so much. Take care.